Right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to East Herts Executive Meeting on this evening. Very beautiful June evening. As you can see, we are all here in Zoom mode, and this is our first executive meeting through this virtual medium. I'd like to welcome any of you who are watching on YouTube, and also any of you who subsequently look at and watch what we're doing. This evening we have the executive, a number of officers, and also a number of our regular councillors. First of all, I'd like to start with agenda item 1, and then I will go through the etiquette of how we are going to run this meeting. So the agenda item 1 is apologies for absence, and Rebecca, I don't believe we have any.
No, Councillor Hazy.
Thank you very much. So as I said, this is our first Zoom meeting. We've all done them before, but just as a reminder, is that please keep your screens on mute unless you are speaking. If you wish to ask a question, and we welcome questions from our members, please raise a blue hand and I will endeavour to catch it. If not, Rebecca's got her beady eyes on these and she will remind me. In terms of voting, it's only executive members who can vote at these particular meetings, and we will do it by raising a blue hand if we are in favour of the recommendations, a green tick if we're in favour, a red if we're not, and a blue hand if we're abstaining. So that's how we're going to run the meeting. As part of my announcements, I also want to say thank you to all our residents who have been through many difficult weeks. And I think sadly, they are going to get easier, but they're not going to get a great deal easier going forward. I think we have seen in our three main towns of Bishop Stortford, Hertford and Ware, some road closures and road barriers put in to help our shopkeepers start to open. And that's a very positive mood. It has meant that sometimes moving around our towns has been difficult. And we believe that the most important thing for all our residents is for us to work with the town and the county councils to keep you safe. And that's the main and the only reason that all this has been happening. Your health and your safety is the most important thing to all of us. So please respect the barriers. Please respect the movement of traffic and pedestrians and cyclists in our towns. And also in terms of that, please enjoy the sunshine, but again, respect social distancing. If we are going to have these freedoms, we do have to make sure that we do not get a second wave of CV coming through, and that can only be achieved by us all acting responsibly to ourselves and to other people. So that's the announcements that I wish to make, so thank you very much indeed. The agenda item 3 is the minutes of the previous meeting, and they are on page 7. I'm happy to propose them. Please may I have a seconder? Councillor Buckmaster, thank you. And please can I ask if all of the exec are in favour of the meeting minutes? Okay, that looks unanimous to me, so thank you all very much indeed. Now, agenda item 4 are declarations of interest. Does anyone, executive and also any councillors present at this meeting, wish to declare any declarations of interest? No, I don't see any, so thank you very much indeed. Agenda item 5 is a verbal update on the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Councillor Wiley, is there anything to report?
Thank you, Chairman. No, due to the current situation, Overview and Scrutiny have not met. Our task and finish group with regards to social housing has had one meeting. The other one has been postponed again due to the current situation. I hope that we'll be back on track in the next few weeks.
Absolutely, hope so. I think we're starting to get used to what business as usual really means now. Agenda item 6, Councillor Pope, do you have anything to comment on the recent Audit and Governance Committee, please?
Yes, thank you. The committee met on the 19th of May. It was obviously via Zoom. We had a full agenda. Representatives from the council's auditors, Ernst & Young, were present at the meeting, where they presented their audit plan for the forthcoming audit and also the timeline for the audit, which was a useful session. We also had presentations from the Shared Anti-Fraud Service and also the Shared Internal Audit Service. Under the Internal Audit Service report, we noted there were a number of outstanding cybersecurity related recommendations that were outstanding as a result of the internal audit process. And we've asked that an appropriate officer attend a future meeting of the committee just to give us an update on those matters. We also noted that a second internal audit of the Herts Home Improvement Agency will be undertaken in the next few months, and we look forward to receiving that report, and we'll scrutinise that quite closely. Lastly, under this item, we noted as a committee that the number of internal audit days being purchased by the council has fallen steadily since 1718, where it began life at 400 days in a year, and it's now trending down towards 300 days. The committee noted this, but agreed it would not like to see it pass below the 300-day threshold for a year. So we'll keep quite a close eye on that. We also received a financial update for Q3, and also a more recent contemporaneous update. I think that'll be dealt with a little later on in this meeting, so I won't go into any detail there. And lastly, we looked at the council's risk management strategy and also the strategic risk register, which was a useful exercise too. That's all, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Pope. I realise I haven't gone around the squares and asked everyone to introduce themselves, so I would be grateful if when you do speak, you just make very clear your name and your position within the council and your member, if you're a member, which ward you're coming from. So apologies for that, but hopefully it's taken a few minutes off the length of the meeting. Okay, if we can now move on to agenda item 7, which is the Gilston Area Charter Supplementary Planning, which starts on page 19 and goes through to page 134, and I shall give a brief introduction to that. This is one of the very important SPDs that we're putting together for the Gilston and integrated into the Harley Gilston Garden Town documentation. But this one establishes the principles of master planning for each of the villages within the Gilston area. As you know, there are 7 villages coming forward over the next 10 to 15, 20 years, which will deliver some 10,000 homes into East Herts. And we know, and we're absolutely adamant, that the quality of these homes, the quality of the design will be exemplary. They will be part and parcel of the fundamental principles of a garden town. And this document through the SPD allows us to make sure that the developers completely understand that and know that those are the standards that we expect and that we wish to have and that we will want. It also helps and understands residents, both who live there at the moment and the new residents that we will be welcoming when the first village is done, get involved with how those design of those villages is going to look, and also the levels of consultation that will be there. It's very clearly laid out in section 4 that if we do not adopt this paper, we lose another foundation upon which we are able to pin some of the important planning policies that we expect that the developers will adhere to. So I'd like to thank officers for this. It's been out for consultation. A number of people have responded to it and made very positive contributions to that consultation, and a number of comments have been incorporated and improved the quality of that document. So thank you to residents and to the organisations who did respond. I don't know if anyone, Councillor Buckmaster, I don't know if you wish to say a few words.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Yes, you asked us to introduce ourselves. I'm Eric Buckmaster. I'm a ward member for the area, and I'm also executive member for Wellbeing. I was involved in a working group with our officers and the neighbourhood plan groups and the site promoters in helping to develop this. And it was explained this is very much a framework. It's not dispensing with any existing policies or other work undertaken, but it informs them and ensures consistency for a very large project that will take place over a long period of time. And for me, the key words are in option 2, which is adopting the SPD, which you can find on point 4.4 on page 24. And the key words for me, as the leader was saying, is master planning process will be undertaken in a comprehensive manner. Master plans will be produced for each of the Gilston area villages, together with, very importantly, an overarching strategic landscape master plan that will address all of the elements and the important network of green spaces. And again, very important that it will knit together the area and ensure it integrates successfully with the wider landscaping and existing neighbouring communities. And the last point is really important to the existing communities, and one on which they have sought clarity, including for their own neighbourhood plan. The important thing is that while we have 2 promoters and landowners in places for people for villages 1 to 6 and CPP Brigham Estate for village 7, that it is treated consistently as one strategic site and one strategic landscape master plan, but part of the garden town. And following the consultation, as the leader said, modifications were made based on the responses received from various parties, including the site promoters and the neighbourhood plan group. And this paper has been shared again with the neighbourhood plan group, and I didn't receive any further comments from them. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Buckmaster, and thank you also for the work you've done with the residents in your ward and your division. Are there any comments or questions from anybody, please? No? Okay. So I move the recommendations on page 20. There are 4 of them, A through to D. Executive, please, can I ask you to approve them?
Councillor Hazy, I think Councillor Page wants to speak.
My apologies, Tim, I didn't see you. Tim, please.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Well, I'd just like to say that I think the master plans that are being produced by this council are getting better and better, and with very high aspirations, and I applaud that, and I can see that a lot of work has gone into producing this report, and I thank the officers for that. The one thing that worries me, though, particularly in the light of financial background, and that's affordable housing. I note that on page 107, I think it is, that the master planning will embrace affordable housing. I would ask that at some stage there is a way of strengthening our affordable housing programme and demanding a robust financial viability assessment should viability arise. And the way at the moment the house prices direction is indicated, I foresee problems on viability.
Thank you, Councillor Page. Yes, I think it is a major concern, and talking with other people around the county, it is a problem that we are all very aware of. It is very obvious through the CV19 problems that we are all experiencing, that we've learnt to value some people that perhaps in the past we have not necessarily valued. And they are a very important part of society, and they are doing jobs which have kept everybody else going. And I think we need to recognise that. And to a certain extent, they will not necessarily be those who are able to afford the sorts of house prices that we do have in this district and surrounding areas. So I think this is something that we will keep a very close eye on. I believe that our officers, both in the Garden Town and also our own planning officers, are very conscious of the problems that can exist on viability. And I think this will be an ongoing conversation that will go forward going on. I know Councillor Boylan is also running some work on looking at the whole aspect of affordable housing. Councillor Boylan, I don't know if there's anything you wish to say at the moment, or just that the piece of work is ongoing.
Just that piece of work is, I will get an update later this week, but the intention was to go ahead and appoint an appropriate author to get started on this piece of work, much of which can be done either as a desktop exercise and interviewing individuals in the same way as we are speaking this evening. So I'm still expecting to see a report on the future of affordable housing for the district by the early autumn. The other thing that I would say, Leader, is let's not forget that in terms of planning policy frameworks, we clearly as a council have already adopted the affordable housing SPD that will be complementing this SPD if council so agree it.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you. Councillor Buckmaster?
Yes, thanks, Leader. I just wanted to add that for the Gilton area, of course, the largest site promoter is a very large registered landlord, so they have a great interest in providing affordable homes. So I'm sure that's something that can be worked through. Thank you, Leader.
We'll make sure that they remember that, shall we? Okay, thank you. Is there anything else that anyone else wishes to add on this? Okay, so in that case, Executive, can I take you please to page 20, where there are 4 recommendations. Please, can I ask you?
Sorry, Councillor. I noted that you had proposed the recommendations, but I didn't note a seconder.
No, I was just going back to propose them again and ask for a seconder, but thank you very much, Rebecca. Okay, so may I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Buckmaster, thank you. Can we all vote now? Okay, so we've got the right number there. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, can we now go please to agenda item 8, which is on page 135, which is a financial update. Councillor Williamson, are you going to introduce this paper, please?
Yes, thank you, Leader. Jeff Williamson, Executive Member for Financial Sustainability. Well, it will have been readily apparent to all that the measures taken across East Hertfordshire in line with national policies and guidance to fight the coronavirus will have had a severe impact on our finances. And therefore we have chosen to bring this update to the Executive for formally noting. It describes the effects on our budget and our medium-term financial plan based on figures available at the end of April. The income from our fees and charges is a critical element of our annual budget, and this has fallen sharply, as can be seen in the table on page 137, which shows an overall drop of circa £800,000 in just 1 month. The biggest numbers are from planning fees, trade refuse collection, car park charges, and income from Hertford Theatre. It is very hard to know how to extrapolate these figures over the coming months, as we cannot predict how quickly life may return to something resembling normal. However, the situation is easing this month and again from July, which, if we are being optimistic and in the most general terms, means that we will have had to endure only perhaps 3 months of this scale of impact. Alternatively, Meaningful recovery could well take longer than this to get underway, perhaps until September. On this basis, we could therefore be looking at an overall reduction in income from fees and charges of between £2.4 and £4 million. Furthermore, we have not been able to move forward with some of our financial sustainability initiatives and other measures that were designed to help our budget this year, such as the planned increase in car park charges and expanding our property investments. Along with sources of income that may never recover, this could put a further £550,000 pressure on our finances. There are some savings we have been able to make due to our facilities not being open, but these are just about balanced with expected lower returns on our property fund investments. However, we have had some assistance from central government who have provided to us a grant of £1.5 million. Therefore, taking all the above into account, we are potentially facing a net loss in the range of £1.4 to £3 million. But to counteract this, we do have £4.5 million in our general reserves, which, to put plainly, are our rainy day funds, so we can cope with even our anticipated worst case and still have some buffer remaining. Despite this, though, we have joined with the LGA and the District Council's network to lobby government hard for more central funding to provide for local services, as we should not lose out just because we have managed our finances carefully over successive years. And it is important government recognises the key role authorities like us are playing in supporting our local communities and residents through the current crisis. Looking forward, we as a council also need to consider very carefully the longer term impact on our medium term financial plan and our finances for next year and beyond. The plans I presented in January had a number of initiatives to make savings or generate income for future years. With the need now to fill budget gaps, ensure our economic recovery and rebuild our reserves, these longer term strategies have become even more vital. Returning to the short term, we recognise that some local businesses will struggle to recover quickly as restrictions are lifted, so we have a second recommendation on the paper which allows heads of service some flexibility to defer payment of fees and charges for businesses where otherwise this could cause them financial hardship. Therefore, please, I would like to move the recommendations A and B on page 135. I'm happy to take questions from the executive and other members. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you. And just to make sure I don't get the process wrong again, I believe Councillor McAndrew is going to second that, and then we'll take questions. Okay, seconded by Councillor McAndrew. Are there any comments or questions on this paper? Councillor Pope.
Thank you. My name is Mark Pope. I'm the Chair of Audit and Governance. I'm also a member for Ware Chadwell. Councillor Williamson, thank you for your report. And I note that you mentioned the drop in income from the council's two investments in the two property funds. The reduction in income is quite a steep one. It's what, 30%, give or take, of what we were earning. And I wondered if either your officers maybe had to give us an idea of what's causing this. Is it just a reduction in income into the funds, or is it maybe voids in the portfolio? And how long do we think this reduction in income will last? You mentioned in 2021 it's likely to cost us £200,000, but have you any idea if it will go on for longer? Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Pope. You're talking about the property funds. We are expecting maybe a reduction in income from those, maybe because the interest rate that we're getting may suffer from the current circumstances. But you also refer to some of the other income that we've been anticipating building into our budget for next year and beyond. I mean, the £200,000 was to come from property investments. Obviously, we do hope to generate those still, but just the whole process of being able to go out and search the market and acquire property at the moment is very difficult. So we do hope to be able to get some money back into this year, but some of that may have to be deferred into the following years. So, I'm sorry, has that answered the question?
Yeah, I mean, it was really a good. It looks like the income generated from the property portfolio, property funds, which would lead me to believe it was income being generated by those property portfolios rather than bank-related income.
Okay, there are two separate items. We have our money invested in property funds, which I mentioned in my overview.
Yes.
But we also anticipate further income from our property investments in bricks and mortar, commercial property, as part of our financial sustainability initiatives, which under other circumstances we would normally be well underway with now.
Sure.
But because the market has been on hold, there's not something we've been able to progress.
I would say so. The reduction in return is a combination of what we might receive from the funds and also from our direct property investments.
Yes.
Thank you. That's clear. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions on that? No. I mean, I think we need to put this into context. On the whole, East Herts is in a sound position. There are headlines of some of our neighbouring authorities that they are not in such a good position. But what we don't want to do is for the government to say, well, you're fine, you've got lots of reserves, get through your reserves, and then you don't need any more money to either cover the cost of COVID that we have incurred or the loss of income from some of our other income streams, such as car parking. Because we have made sure that we've got those reserves to do the sorts of things that are important for our residents. And if once you've spent reserves, then as we all know, that's it, and we'd need to start building them up again. So I think we need to be very mindful of these figures, and we need to be sure that we are doing everything we can to make sure that we start building up some of those income streams as fast as possible. I'd like to thank Bob and his team for doing an extraordinarily fantastic analysis, because it's very easy to read and it's very easy to understand. So thank you to Bob for doing all of that. Are there any other comments or questions on this? No? Okay. Bob, I see you're on mute. Is that because you want to say something, or you've just pressed a button?
No, Linda, I've remained muted throughout. Nothing really to add to Councillor Williamson's presentation. Thank you.
Okay. No, thank you very much indeed. Okay, so there are two recommendations, executive on page 135, A and B. We have a proposer and we have a seconder, so please can I ask you if you're in favour of those two recommendations? Great, carried. Thank you very much indeed. We now move on to agenda item 10. No, sorry, we're going to agenda item 9, which is on the additional pack that was sent out to us at the beginning of the week. Let me just pull it up. Right, this is to note the decision of the Chief Executive to approve a scheme for the Local Authority Discretionary Grant Fund taken under urgency provisions. This is on page 3 to 28 of the additional agenda item sent out earlier. Councillor Williamson, I believe you're going to introduce this one.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Leader. In response to the coronavirus, the government announced a number of different types of support for businesses. Those that we have administered locally include the retail rate relief, 19.7 million, and grants for small businesses and businesses in the retail, hospitality and leisure sectors, together totaling 26.9 million so far. eligibility for these schemes was fully specified by government. Certain types of business were specifically excluded from eligibility in these schemes, including financial services such as banks and building societies, and professional services including financial advisors, accountants and solicitors. Government subsequently announced that additional funding would be given to local authorities to support local businesses that were not eligible for the Small Business Grant Fund or the Retail, Leisure and Hospitality Fund. For East Hart, this funding is £1.5 million. The scheme, whilst having some mandatory national criteria, includes scope for discretion which local authorities can determine. The details of the scheme that we are applying in East Hart is described within the report. To ensure that this much needed funding gets to businesses as quickly as possible, following consultation with ourselves as the executive, the scheme was approved by the Chief Executive under the urgency provisions of the Constitution. This meant that the scheme could be launched last week on the 27th of May, with a closing date of midnight on the 9th of June, allowing businesses 2 weeks to make their applications. There are 2 recommendations on the paper. Recommendation A asks us to note the decision taken to approve the scheme. We have also made the provision that should the available funding not be taken in full, that I, in conjunction with the head of our Revenues and Benefits Service, have authority to amend the scheme in order to widen the eligibility. This is covered by recommendation B. So, Leader, I'm very pleased to move both recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. May I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Rutland-Barsby, thank you very much indeed. Are there any comments or questions from other members? Councillor Wiley.
Thank you, Chairman. I probably should have declared an interest. I'm running a small business in East Hart, so I probably do have to declare an interest in this and probably should be excluded from this part of the meeting. I do apologise.
Okay, thank you for that. Rebecca, are we all right so long as Councillor Wiley obviously doesn't say anything else or partake of the conversation?
Thank you, Councillor Hazy. I believe so, as the presentation of the report and the seconding have just occurred and the debate hasn't taken place yet. So I think if the host of the meeting could place Councillor Wiley into a waiting room and then return him to the meeting after that, if this is a DPI. I'm taking it that that is the case, Councillor Wiley. So if you're happy for the host of the meeting to place you in the waiting room, I suggest that that's the procedure that we follow.
Okay, Stephen, is that possible, please?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I'm going to put Councillor Wiley into the waiting room now.
All right, bye, John. Hopefully we'll see you later. Okay, he is in the waiting room. Okay, in that sense, are there any other comments or questions? No. Okay, in that case, we have a proposer and a seconder and 2 recommendations, A and B, all in favour. Okay, great. Stephen, can you get Councillor Wiley back with us, please?
Councillor Wiley's rejoined.
Excellent. Welcome back, John. Now, the agenda item 10, which is we go back to our main paper, agenda. Which is to note a decision taken under delegated powers to approve an emergency loan to the leisure contractor Sport and Leisure Management Limited SLM as a response to COVID-19 restrictions. Now, this is also tied up with agenda item 12. However, agenda item 12 is effectively part 2s and pink paper. Now, we will take these 2 together But if you believe that you will wish to ask comments or questions on the second part of this agenda item 12, we will have to go through the process of excluding the public and turning off the website. James, can you just confirm that that's the way to do it, please?
Yes, Leader. As discussed with you previously, because of the sensitivities and the part 2 nature of the report at number 12, if there are any sort of questions or discussions to be taking place around that, then you will need to cease the recording on YouTube so that it is effectively in part 2. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. So please, just everyone be very careful. And if you wish, obviously you can ask questions on that paper agenda item 12, but we just have to make sure that we go through the process of going into part 2s. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Leader. Well, this paper covers the urgent decision taken by the Chief Executive under emergency powers to provide temporary funding to our leisure services provider, SLM. The funding is in 2 parts. Firstly, from the moment our leisure centres closed on the 20th of March in line with government instructions, they were taking no income. Whilst SLM had the resources to cover their March payroll, they had insufficient in reserve to pay staff salaries for April. As there would be a delay in SLM receiving government funds through the Job Retention Scheme, it was agreed to provide a short-term loan to SLM to cover until the government money became available. The decision to provide the loan involved a balanced consideration of risks, but the potential impacts and costs to the council should SLM be forced to cease trading were deemed too high compared with the relatively low risk of the loan not being repaid. And I can now report this money has now been repaid in full. The second part of the funding relates to loans made month by month to cover basic overhead costs and also to retain a small staff presence at the centres to provide essential ongoing maintenance. The amounts are given in paragraph 2.6 on page 151. The terms of the loan include that they must be repaid within 6 months of the leisure centres reopening. So we have 2 recommendations to note these decisions A and B on page 149, which I'm pleased to move. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Please may I have a seconder for those papers? Councillor Cutting, thank you very much indeed. Are there any comments or questions? Councillor Buckmaster, this is an area within your portfolio. Is there anything you wish to comment on?
No, nothing to add. I think Councillor Williamson explained it very well, and the main loan has already been repaid, and I think the actions were absolutely sensible in view of the situation we were in, so totally supportive of this.
Thank you for that. Are there any other comments or questions on this? No? Okay, in that case, there are 2 recommendations on page 149, A and B. Please can I ask the executive to vote? Okay, that looks as though it's covered unanimously. Rebecca, I don't believe that we have any urgent business.
Not that I'm aware of, Councillor Hazy.
Okay, in that case, thank you all of you. Thank you for all appearing promptly on time so we could make sure we got rid of all the techie issues and we could all be seen and heard, and thank you all for your contributions and have a good evening. Thank you. And the meeting closes at 19:38.